Today we're going to talk about doing nothing. And this is something that is very important, but pretty difficult to do. In our society, in most modern societies, productivity is valued above everything. And so become it becomes ingrained in us to constantly be doing, to constantly be thinking about producing something, accomplishing something. We find it hard to just sit and be still. Some of us are terrified of the thought of being lazy or unproductive. And so we kind of go through our days without ever really just being still or doing nothing, allowing ourselves calm or um, any type of, and I'm not just talking about relaxation here. I'm because this actually applies to your life at large to be able to do nothing. We'll get into that a little bit more. Some of the concepts like wu wei and allowing yourself to go with the flow in life. This all uh, comes from being able to do nothing. And I use that phrase, but um, it's not it's not exactly that you're doing nothing. It's more that you're just being. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit. I'm going to read from the Tao Te Ching. I'm going to read a couple of my poems today, and also we're going to practice doing nothing together for a few minutes, probably maybe once or twice. So, depending, because people come and go in these. And so, I'd like for everybody to maybe get a chance to practice that. So, to get started, I think I'm going to read from the Tao Te Ching. Um, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this book. It's actually a very small book. It's not, a lot of our books, our spiritual texts tend to be big. This one is full of wisdom, yet very succinct. So, and also the Tao Te Ching is one of these books that it's best to not try to understand it so much with your mind and just allow it to kind of hit your heart. You might not totally understand it. You might feel it. So, I encourage you to just listen. And again, thank you everybody for joining. I see, hi Marlena and Midwestern Yankee. Um, I'm just thrilled that everybody has shown up today. I'm really excited about that. So, just to get started, I'm going to read chapter 43. The gentlest thing in the world overcomes the hardest thing in the world. That which has no substance enters where there is no space. This shows the value of non action. Teaching without words, performing without actions, that is the master's way. And the thing about the Tao Te Ching is sometimes it can feel almost paradoxical. And that's the beauty of it because it isn't necessarily logical, but it's definitely you'll find it to be true or real when you meditate on it or think about it and contemplate it and let it really get into your heart. So let's talk a little bit more about doing nothing. When we say doing nothing, some of us, like, I mean, Actually, a lot of us, in order to try and accomplish that, will, take substances, to try and find that peace or that stillness or to calm down, to chill out, or we we, because we know we need that. And so we'll do various things to try and give ourselves that. Um, Yet and again, I'm not gonna say that you should never do something like that, but to become reliant on it is counterproductive. And so to learn how to cultivate stillness and beingness with just yourself without needing anything outside of you, this is extremely beneficial to your life. I'm sure some of you have heard the the phrase, and I'm honestly not sure who coined it. Uh, it it could be one of, many different Taoist or Buddhist writers or speakers, um, who and maybe somebody in the comments might know, but there's the saying, "We are human beings, not human doings." And we get so caught up in doing, 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 but being is actually where everything comes from. And so, if you want to find fulfillment and satisfaction in your life, if you're looking to become more aligned with your higher self or God or however you relate to it, being is you're going to find that's essential. So, how do we do that? How do we It sounds so easy. Most of us have, especially when we were young, were probably called lazy at various times, and, um, everybody's kind of afraid of being lazy. We are in this society where the narrative is, um, we can't stop. We can't be lazy. We have to be productive. It's almost demonized in a sense, and I'm not encouraging laziness per se, but I honestly think what we call laziness is many times being still or being being. And when we're young, we have a tendency to naturally do it. We have when we're young, when we're children, we have a tendency to do what's natural. And that's what doing nothing is all about. It's about coming back to what's natural. It's about learning how not to force things, how not to go against the flow of the universe, the flow of yourself, and learn how to get into alignment. And what does being in alignment mean? A lot of times, we kind of throw that word out there, but it's basically being in agreement with yourself or not having cognitive dissonance, not having hypocrisy, not having conflict within yourself, but being in complete alignment is feeling like everything is working the way you want it to, the way that feels natural to you. There's a concept, and I want to chime in here. Marlena says she's not a fan of all the expected production, and neither am I. I think many of us are starting to see that how how detrimental it is. I'm gonna before I move on, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that happened to me back in right around 2010, 2011. I had a pretty intense spiritual awakening, if you will. That's what most people would refer to it as. had been a evangelical Christian for many years, and that was all I really knew when it came to spirituality, and I will mention I was always kind of rebellious in evangelical Christianity. I never really totally drank the Kool-Aid, if you will. I was I was kind of a thorn in a lot of their sides there. And then I finally got the courage to start walking away from that and open myself up to other things, and one of those things was meditation, and through meditation, I started having these experiences which led to, uh, a spiritual awakening where my heart and my mind opened up, and I was flooded with insight and realized so many things I that were in books and were being taught, yet I didn't know that. I mistakenly thought I was, like, the first person to know these things, because I had never heard of them before, and I didn't know anybody who talked about them. So, one of the things that kind of came to me, I became aware of the the toxicity of feeling like we had to constantly produce, and I started looking at the way we worked and looking at our society, and I was like, "What is wrong with us? What are we doing? Why are we forcing this on ourselves? Who's forcing this on us? What is going on?" And I grappled with that for a while, trying to understand that, and at the time, when I would bring it up to people back in 2011 and 2012, people would, like, just not know what I was talking about. Like, it was so foreign back then, and it might be hard for some of you to imagine because now it's talked about. I mean, now it's a definite narrative, but then it was not. It was, I mean, sure, there were probably some people talking about it, but it definitely wasn't anywhere near, discussed like it is today. So, um, people just kinda thought that I like, there was still that mentality of, "Well, this is just how it is, and everybody's always done this, and why," like, almost like I was, like, trying to cheat the system or cheat life or something by wanting to look at that, and here, I wanna read this comment real quick from, Soren Cloud. "A few years ago, I started being instead of doing, and it made me incredibly happy. Then a few months later, I realized I wasn't being anymore. I basically couldn't remember how I did it. Maybe something along the lines of giving up my dreams in a good way." And so I want to touch on that because with my experience with spiritual awakening, and I know this happens with a lot of people, sometimes, and I call this grace, there might be another word that other people use, that's more in line with some of these, concepts, but that's just my background is evangelical Christianity, and so I still, take some of those words and reclaim them. So, for me, I feel like there's this grace where, and however you wanna look at it, spirit, God, your higher self, the universe, but, um, whatever you want to, see it as, it gives us an experience many times. It without us even looking for it, it just kinda happens, and that happened to me, and it sounds like that's what happened to you. You were able to tap into being, and and then later it felt like you lost it, and a lot of people who have spiritual awakenings, this will happen to them. They'll have this experience and they'll kind of walk in it and it'll be really easy for a while and then it's not anymore. And that is, in my opinion, that's a way to show us that it's real, that it's attainable. But then sometimes there's more inner work that needs to be done um in order to cement it or, make it something that is more habitual or just part of our natural life. That's why a lot of times we call these things a practice, because sometimes you have to practice it. You have to do things that help you cultivate that. That's a word I like to use a lot, where we cultivate these things. And Uh, so many times it'll come easy at first, and then it might, like, dry up or go away. Now, that doesn't happen for everybody, and sometimes you, can tap right back into it. And other times it might be because you are picked up a habit or started doing something that's getting interfering with that, and that's where the inner work again comes in to kind of reflect and look and see, are you doing anything that's causing you to not be able to just be anymore? Is there something you're afraid of? A lot of times fear has a lot to do with why things kind of seem to fall off or dissipate. So um So that's, something to keep in mind. It's definitely don't take it like it's over. And, uh, and I see you say sometimes it seems like I'm choosing spiritual enlightenment or physical success, and I'm not sure if I'm totally reading that right, but I think it kinda sounds like you're saying it has to be one or the other. And I used to feel that way too. I felt like I had to pick one over the other, and I can tell you, you don't. Um, that is a very common in my opinion, a very common misconception. And we get that a lot from, the monks that, seclude themselves, and this idea that we have to go away and leave society, and Jesus didn't even, you know, have Jesus didn't even get married and have kids, which of course, that could be argued by some, but I think, and maybe there was a time when it was like this, and maybe our consciousness wasn't capable, but I think we are now in a time where we are capable of having spiritual enlightenment and also physical success. Now, maybe not the type of physical success that some think you should have, as in, like, maybe you're not going to become Elon Musk, and honestly, I don't know why you would want to, but you can still have a certain amount of, what your heart's desire wants in the physical world. You don't have to, like, there is ego dissolution, there is the understanding that we are not our ego, and the understanding that we are one, we are truly um God or spirit, or this, you know, we're not just this physical body, but that doesn't mean that you don't have this physical body for a reason and that you aren't here to experience this life. A lot of times I like to say, why would we have even come here if we weren't here to experience this? I honestly think that's why we're here. We took on this body and this ego so that we could have this experience in this physical realm, or else we wouldn't have this physical realm. We wouldn't have duality. We would have just non-duality, just spirit, like the way it was before all this was created. So I think that however you want to look at it. If you think God created it, if you think that you are one with God and you are co-creating it, but we made this for a reason. So I don't think that you have to choose. In fact, learning how to be and learning how to find um, non non-action, learning how to find effortless action is key to being able to have spiritual enlightenment and physical success. Because many times we try and get physical success through trying, forcing, pushing, creating, producing. We try and make it happen when genuine physical success will come naturally out of your being. And so that is going to bring me back to, let's read another passage from the Tao, because the Tao Te Ching is where we get a lot of these ideas from. And the Tao a Taoist concept of Wu Wei is basically the idea of effortless action or going with the flow. And when I talk about doing nothing, now that's a practice that we can practice, and meditation is the formal practice of doing nothing, if you will. And that though is a practice that then overflows into our daily life. And in our daily life, Wu Wei is learning how to flow with the universe, how to eventually right action or effortless action comes from your being. So here, before I keep going, because I can keep talking about that for a while, I want to read this passage. This is chapter 48 from the Tao Te Ching, and I'm glad that you found that helpful, Soren. Um, and, you know, DM me anytime if you want to talk about it some more. Okay, so chapter 48. In the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the practice of the Tao, every day something is dropped. Less and less do you need to force things until finally you arrive at non-action. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. True mastery can be gained by letting things go their own way. It can't be gained by interfering. And can kind of let that hit you for a second. But I do want to, there's a note in the back on this about the this translation, Stephen Mitchell. He says in here, the translation, true mastery can be gained, but then he puts a note, true mastery, actually, it can't be gained. True mastery is letting things take their course. So true mastery of ourselves and our lives, not talking about mastering anybody else because that's not helpful for anybody, but true mastery of ourselves is letting things take their natural course. And so Wu Wei is that idea which we get from the Tao that we can trust and go with the flow of the universe. We can go with the flow of what's inside of us. And when we learn how to find stillness and be, non-action will, sorry, non-action is kind of a confusing term. Um, right action or effortless action is a little bit, I feel like, easier to understand. That will naturally come out of our being. And what I mean by that, and this is something that I've noticed, is that in spiritual circles, we talk a lot about finding stillness, meditating, being in the present moment awareness. So all these concepts about, slowing down, and you'll see this a lot on Substack. There's a definite community of people who are recognizing overproductivity isn't healthy, and going, doing isn't good for us, and they're making choices to slow down and be more, not feeling the need to do, and but at the same time, a lot of times somebody will write something or say something about being, and this comes up a lot when we talk about manifesting or creating your own reality. uh, this comes up a lot because we talk about, manifesting or allowing it to happen and feeling it in your inner reality, and that will manifest in your outer reality. But we're almost very quickly after we talk about that, it seems like there's this need or this urge to say, but you have to have action. You have to act. You're going to have to um, take action, take action. And even in spiritual circles, it's really hard for us to just even think of allowing ourselves to just be. I'm going to say you don't have to take action. You don't have to decide, okay, now I've got to take action or my dreams aren't going to happen. My reality isn't going to change. I'm not going to be able to get into alignment. I am not going to tell you take action. I'm going to tell you to be, to do nothing, and maybe even do that for a while until right action or effortless action, which is different than taking action. And it might not sound like there's a difference, but there's a nuance there between taking action and effortless action. And so when we learn how to cultivate beingness and doing nothing where we can be still, and when this is then cultivated into our daily life and we start doing this more and more, you'll find that natural, effortless action comes up out of your being. It's There's a term called no mind, and that doesn't mean that you get rid of your mind, but it means that you don't have to think about it. It is something that you will feel. It will feel natural. You won't have to coerce yourself. And this again is a practice. This is something that I have gotten much better at, but I still find myself, a lot of times worry and fear is the thing that will drive us to take action. And it can be anything from worried about money, job, health, getting your health insurance, getting, worried about your car. It's like all these different things can drive us to feel like we've got to take action. But I'm going to tell you that there's a place, there's a there's a there's a flow that you can find where it will just happen naturally out of you. It's almost like a Rube Goldberg machine where one thing hits the next thing and then hits the next thing. It's just like it turns into just this natural flow of events. Neville Goddard talked about the bridge of incidents, and this is a similar thing. It's like these things will just happen. You don't have to stress yourself over it, and you don't have to worry that you're not doing what's right. It will just come. It will come from you. And again, this all kind of starts with learning how to be still and learning how to do nothing. So now let's take a minute, and I'm gonna read a couple of my poems in a little bit about this, but first let's take just maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and let's do nothing together. And when I say do nothing, immediately some of you are going to get stressed over this idea. It's going to feel foreign to you. Um, so that's okay. There's no expectation here, and I don't want you to try to do anything. I don't want you to try to. That's why I'm not talking about meditation, because a lot of times meditation is the formal practice of doing nothing, but when we think about meditation, we automatically start trying to meditate, and that can be so counterproductive. So instead, we're just going to do nothing. So if you have thoughts, you have thoughts. If you, um, many times doing nothing kind of is hard because we quiet that outer noise, and then suddenly we can hear that inner noise very loudly, and that can freak some of us out, especially if you're new to this. But I'm going to ask you to just do nothing, to just let it be. Just let it be what it is. Going, it's certainly not going to kill you, which It I can sometimes feel that way. Feelings can feel so heavy. It's not going to hurt you. It's the resistance to it is the worst part of it. When you relax and just let it be, you'll see that it gets much easier. And, some of you, you're not gonna struggle as much. Some of you practice this, and so obviously you're not gonna struggle as much, but, um, we're just going to have no expectation, and I wanna say hi to Tangled Words who just joined. You joined just in time to practice doing nothing with us. So we're going to, we're gonna try, and this isn't about getting it right. This isn't about getting it perfect. This isn't about doing anything. It's about doing nothing. So don't try and focus on your breathing, or try and, all these different things that we do when we try to meditate or slow ourselves down. Don't worry about any of that. Whatever's natural, whatever is natural, just be. And it'll get easier the more you practice this. So I'm going to shut up now and be quiet, and let's do nothing together. Okay, so that was just about 2 minutes, and for some of you, that might have been the longest 2 minutes of your life. Um, but, you know, give yourself, some applause for that. I know it's not easy, and we're going to do that again at the end, where we're going, for those of you who just came in, Mac and Robert, we were practicing doing nothing together, and, um it is, like I said, it sounds so easy. We should doing nothing. I mean, you're doing nothing, but it can definitely be more difficult than it sounds. So I'm so grateful for those of you who were doing nothing with me. And again, we'll try that again at the end. If you have to leave before we get to it, please practice that some more in your life anytime. Obviously, you can do that anywhere. Well, maybe not anywhere, but there's plenty of opportunities where you have time. And instead of just like mentally, being so caught up in that space, you can allow yourself to just do nothing. So, right now, we're going to switch gears for a minute, and I'm going to, before I read my poem, I want to address this question that Tangled Words just asked. How do you turn off your thoughts? And as Max said, that's a good question. First, I want to say that the goal isn't to turn off your thoughts. Maybe eventually the goal is to have peace and not be so, have constant thoughts racing through your head. But when we're first starting to be still, you're going to have thoughts. That's what your mind does. It thinks. And I'm not going to say that I can't get to a place where I'm not having a lot of thoughts and my mind is just very peaceful. Yes, you can achieve that, but most of the time, you're gonna have, especially when you first get started, you're going to hear those thoughts. And the best approach that I have found is to not resist it so much, to realize that there's all this outer noise. So most of the time, we're not even hearing what's going on inside of us. So it's almost like when we quiet down, it's like our mind is like, "Yay, now I can get their attention," because some of those thoughts are so I mean, lots of them aren't, you know, of much value, but some of them are. And so observing your thoughts without judgment is the key to eventually not being bombarded by your thoughts. And I would say if you're really this is what I did early on when I first tried to start meditating is I would try and I would have all this stuff just going through my head. And it seemed like, well, how can I ever meditate? How can I ever find peace if I just have all this stuff going through my head? So for me, I found when that happened, I would try and stay in a meditative space. I would, try and keep that you know, stillness, but I would get a notepad and a pen or pencil and I would start writing my thoughts down. And a lot of times writing it down was like getting it out. And once I would write it down, it would stop, like, harassing me is what it would feel like. It was almost like I could feel like, "Okay, well, I have it written down, I can look at that later," or, "I wrote it down, I can deal with that later." Writing it down many times was a key for me to be able to find freedom from the bombardment of thoughts. But the idea that we're gonna turn off all our thoughts and not have any, especially in the beginning, is kind of, it's not super accurate, and it's kind of like something we have to acknowledge, uh, to get to ano it's like a step in the process. It's like, "Oh, okay, this is what's inside of me." And facing it or observing it without judgment, And what I mean by that is you don't identify with it, like, so you have these thoughts and they might be what you think are good, they might be what you think are bad, but you're not gonna decide that. You're just gonna be like, "Oh, okay, so I'm thinking about this. Oh, okay, so afraid of this. Oh, okay, I keep rehearsing this thing in my head, this conversation in my head over and over because I am afraid of what's gonna happen." And, writing it out allows you to kind of, get past that. And now I see, Tangled Words is saying, I guess the better question is, how do you focus on one thing at a time? And that is practice. That is learning how to be still, and I don't mean you have to sit in the lotus position or anything like that, but, I mean, you can lay in your bed, you can take a walk. A lot of people who get antsy, walking is really good, and focus on one thing, and you won't be a most likely, you won't be able to at first. Most likely, you'll try and focus, and the next thing you know, you're off here thinking about something else, and then you just gently bring yourself back to what you're focusing on. I have been meditating since 2010, and I still can struggle with this. So it's not like and then I can have like tons of times where I don't, but it is a practice. Sometimes it it goes well, and again, that's a judgment, but other times you've got a lot going on, and so it might be harder to do. Breathing is probably one of the best things to try and focus on first because breathing helps you settle yourself. It helps you tell yourself you're safe and that you don't have to worry. Um, so focusing on your breath, and you can try a certain way of breathing, and there certainly are methods of breathing that can help you relax more, that can help you calm, but you can also just observe the way you're breathing and just watch how you're breathing. And then you find yourself thinking about something else, and then you realize that, and don't get mad at yourself. You just bring yourself back to that. And you start focusing on your breathing again. Um, you can also focus on an affirmation. That's another helpful thing to just focus on. So there really is no easy answer because it all of this takes practice. I wish there was, you know, something I could say, well, you just do this and then by tomorrow you're going to have it, and as far as I know that isn't true. Um, these are things that we have to persist in, that we have to choose to do. And you don't have to, I find that doing it for a long time can be counterproductive. So practicing it for a few minutes, multiple times a day, many times is going to be more beneficial than trying to sit down and do it for an hour, half an hour, even 10 minutes. Practicing it for 2 minutes at a time. Uh, when you first get up, just when you have any downtime, or you're waiting in line somewhere, or there's so many like areas, and if you're only going to do it for 2 minutes, you can take that time out. I mean, you could set an alarm, you can uh however you feel comfortable, and just practice focusing on one thing. And again, this is very much what we're talking about today with doing nothing. Focusing on one thing is probably like the next step after doing nothing, where we're doing when I'm just talking about doing nothing, I'm talking about not even like worrying about focusing on anything. Um, but at a certain point, you're you will want to start mastering your mind in a sense. And again, it's not about dominating your thoughts. It's not about getting rid of them. It's about learning how to allowing them, and then sometimes they'll be real busy and you just kinda allow it to all come up, and then if you don't resist it, you'll see they just kinda, like, fall away, or like I said, if they're persisting, you can try writing it down, and, through practice, you will see a change. You will start to find more peace. You'll start to see that you can focus more. I, I've had my ups and downs, and I, at one time, found that I was having trouble focusing on one thing after I had been meditating for years, and this happened, in my opinion, a lot of it had to do with my work situation at the time where multitasking was, that was king. Multitasking, if you were a good multitasker, I mean, you were you were everything, and I had gotten so good at multitasking where I could do this and this and this and think about this and I could do all these different things. But then when I wanted to sit down and meditate or even read a book, I was finding it hard I was finding it hard to just focus. I was finding it hard to just be able to focus on the book or to meditate without feeling like I had to start doing something else. And I think it maybe has gotten worse in our society with the onslaught of, we've got our phones, we've got our iPads, we've got like I've heard it said that most people have like 3 different screens going at a time. And so we're like we can't just like people don't even just sit down and watch a movie anymore. You're checking your phone, you might be doing something else, like I used to I'd be like painting and watching TV and checking this and talking to somebody and I'd have all these things going. And deciding to just focus on one thing and and realizing how overrated multitasking is kind of the first step and allowing yourself to just do one task at a time. When you're eating, just focus on eating. Don't I think my internet might be slowing down, so hopefully it'll catch up here soon. But just focus on what the food tastes like, what the food smells like, how it feels. You don't have to watch TV or read a book or scroll social media while you're eating. So start trying to um, find little ways that you can focus on one thing. And okay, the questions and the chat is going to go by me, so I want to touch on this. I agree. Doing nothing while driving is a great practice. Learning how to instead of like let your thoughts just kind of consume you, just practice on just being and doing nothing. Being in the element of driving the car. That's a great practice. And then Tangled Words asked, "What about uh, Reiki?" And I should know how to pronounce this. Let's see, Reiki. That's what it looks like to me. Reiki as a this is one of these things as a reader, I don't necessarily hear how things are pronounced, but I know a little bit of how the Japanese alphabet and romanization works, so I'm pretty sure I pronounced it right. Is how about that as a jumping off point for meditation? If that works for you, by all means. I mean, there's so many great things about it. I If that is something that you're drawn to, explore that, definitely. Um, Marlena says that she does like 15 things at once, especially when she's creating. It's kind of insane, and I I understand that. I I kinda like I said, I got into that habit where I like and sometimes I still will and, you know, as a creative person, I don't like to curb myself too much when sometimes that is part of my flow. I'm like, I've got my watercolor going and I've got, and everybody's talking about how we pronounce Reiki, and so it looks like we're all on the same page with that. Um, but sometimes, I'll go back and forth where I'm like painting and then I'm writing and then maybe I'm on Substack checking the comments or you know, answering my notifications. So I might bounce around sometimes, and that feels like the flow to me. But I try not to do so many things at once. Sometimes I find myself doing it, but I find I end up feeling so much more peaceful when I don't do that, when I can stay with one thing. Um, and Tangled Word says focusing on symbols is soothing. And yes, and in a mandala, that's something that you can focus on, or various symbols, sigils, uh, a a drawing, a painting, focusing on an image of some sort can be very soothing. And another thing are mudras, which I've talked about before. Mudras can be very helpful, and I'll probably talk about that again, um, to soothe us and find stillness. I didn't even touch upon that yet, but mudras are the little, different s- things we do with our hands when we meditate, and they physically affect our body and they spiritually affect us, our mind and our spirit. So those things can be very beneficial. And Tangled and Marlena are talking about how all their friends live in Substack, and I have to agree. Um, Substack has become my family and friends, and you know, I spend a lot of time with you all. Uh, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Um, and Max says all his friends are Muppets, so um, that's awesome, actually. Um, but so it's not necessarily bad to like check Substack and do anything like that. Just give yourself time, or cultivate stillness. So maybe you're going about it in a much more calm, effortless way. Like, do you ever find that you start to feel anxiety on Substack? Like you're like, I've got all these things to get to. Oh, I have all these notifications. Oh, I haven't answered this person. I've got these DMs. Instead, allow yourself to be more peaceful and still, and trust that I seriously have to, cuz sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I will sometimes get anxious over the fact that I have a lot of notifications. Like right now, I have some notifications that I haven't like answered, and I have in the at times allowed myself to almost worry or feel like, "Oh no, what if they think I'm ignoring them?" And I've had to tell myself, "Just trust. Just, you know, they'll understand. Don't put yourself up to so much. Do you want them to feel that way, or don't we all want each other to be more relaxed and in the moment and going with the flow of the universe versus feeling like we have to always perform or respond immediately? So let's try and give ourselves and each other more grace in that area. And so when you're on Substack, go about it in a less frantic way, possibly. So, okay, I've been talking a while. I do want to read a couple of my poems that deal with what we've been talking about. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to at least read one of them now. So the first one is Miracle in Mundane Clothing. And this is actually, I think, the first time I've ever read my poetry out loud, to such a large number of people, and the first time on Substack. So here we go. Um, Miracle in mundane clothing. If your mind is feeling messy, if you wish everything would slow down, close your eyes, take a breath, be in this moment. Everything else can wait. Pause. Feel life flooding through you. You are alive. Right now is a miracle in mundane clothing. Relish it. Don't miss it. It's all here for you. So many times in our pursuit of doing and producing, we miss what's happening right now, right in the present. Thank you, Mac. Um, we we overlook it. Eh, Half the time we call it bad. We think, we because of our stress and our feeling like we've got to get things done or we haven't done what we need to do, we're projecting this negativity on our life when that's us just projecting that on our life. Right now in this moment, if you close your eyes and take a breath and realize everything else can wait, you'll find that there's peace there. There's peace underneath all that. And your your power is right now in the present moments, in the present moment. So allow yourself the uh the time and the space to be and recognize that right now, what you have right now is a miracle. It might not look like a miracle. That's just because it's in mundane clothing. It's it's not adorned with holy robes. Instead, it's just walking around in jeans and a t-shirt. But that doesn't make it any less of a miracle. And since I have found that I keep talking a lot in this live stream and getting away from certain things, I think I'm going to go ahead and read my other poem. Um, this one is called The Silence Behind the Sound. Listen, can you hear? The tranquil silence is always near. Behind the noise and deafening sounds, you can feel that peace still abounds. If you tune in to what's inside, you can hear that quiet still resides. Despite the chaos all around, in the pause, calm can still be found. Not without, but within. That's where the stillness has always been. So that poem right there is um, a direct reference to what I've been talking about today. That doing nothing, cultivating stillness, just being is many times the answer to our, why we're so unhappy, why we're so stressed, why we have so many fears. And I want to thank everybody who's chiming in on the comments right now. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Um, and again, I want to harp on, I guess, if you will, that doing nothing is not being lazy. And so what if somebody calls you lazy? So what? I mean, what do they know? They don't know what's going on inside of you. Um, I honestly think lazy is just a most of the time it's it's just one of those words that is misused to, kind of like just it's just become like a derogatory term um because society demands this like hyper productivity, and we're allowed to just be. We are allowed to do that. We're allowed to give ourselves time and space to see what's inside of us, see who we really are. I mean, this life is it's not long. I mean, it's relatively short, and for some of us it's shorter than for others. So, what are we rushing towards? What are we rushing towards? Why are we pushing ourselves so hard to what? Why are we doing that? What are we doing that for? We're all going to end up in the same place. Do we want to fill these days in between when we're born and when we die just with this mad frenzy and frantic rush because our society says we need to get the job done, or our mind, which is, many times programmed from the voices of society, our parents, our families, our teachers, our bosses. So I'm going to encourage each and every one of us to start practicing being still and doing nothing, allowing yourself to spend time in the stillness. And you know what? I mean, if you need to work your way into it, um, that's really cool, Marlena. I see that that happens to be your birthday, 82 viewers. I'm not sure if I'm totally is that 8 oh, in 1982? No, that doesn't make sense. I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that. But, I'm excited that I have 82 viewers. I think that's the most people that have ever shown up for this. So, thank you all for being here. Oh, August 2nd, that makes sense. Duh. My fellow Leo. I should have figured that out because 'cause we're both, close together on the chart. Um, and I'm getting so distracted here. Sorry about that. I wanna thank you all for being here, and I am so appreciative to each and every one of you, and I want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself, to be gentle with others, but be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself room to figure this out. Allow yourself room to figure out how to be, because you definitely weren't taught this. It was natural when you were young, but you were taught how not to be. You were taught how to do. And so many of us, it's become foreign. And so when you're relearning this, if you find it challenging, if you find it difficult, that's okay. And if you need to, give yourself you know, different things to maybe ease into it. Like, and you don't have to like sit in lotus position and, you know, say, I'm not, that's great. That's wonderful. You will find doing that can elevate you almost immediately sometimes. So I'm not disparaging that, but if that doesn't come easy to you, you don't have to do that. Um, and this is all an experiment. I mean, every day is an experiment in our life. So this is an experiment. Learning how to do this is an experiment. So experiment, try different things. And one day this might work for you, and one day that might work for you. Put on some headphones and just focus on the music. Do nothing and just focus on the music instead of cleaning or doing other stuff while you're listening to music. Just do one thing and just listen. It's very similar. I mean, that's a form of meditation. Anytime you're focusing on one thing or focusing on no thing, you are you are tapping into what we call meditation. So, and honestly, who cares if it's called meditation? The idea is to find peace and stillness and connection to yourself and learning more who you are so that you can become in alignment with yourself, so you can agree with yourself, so that you can feel good and conscientious and go to sleep at night without all this stuff keeping you awake, all these like worries and fears. So you at the end of the day, many times when you didn't do that during the day, it all shows up there at the end. So learning how to do this is going to be key to your health and your mental health and your emotional health and your spiritual health. So, uh, yeah, I think I'm gonna want to wrap this up soon. We've been here for gosh, almost an hour now. I guess an hour now, and I um I would love to keep going forever, but I I'm not sure how long people's attention spans are. I'm not sure if what the sweet spot is for how long live stream should be, but if you have any more questions, if you want to throw them in right now, I can maybe try and answer them. We're going to practice doing nothing together again here in a few minutes. And also, if you have any questions or if you want to leave any comments, you can DM me or, uh, leave it in the comments once I post this up. But I appreciate hearing from you, especially because when I first turned this on, the flood just came in of who was here. So I really don't know who's all here, honestly. I got to see some of you. But for the most part, I don't even know. I just know that a lot of you have shown up, and I'm very, very happy about that. Thank you, Tangled Words. I really appreciate that. On Bear Sage says that he's in love with doing nothing. It's his jam, and I can totally get behind that. Um, Sometimes I still find it hard, but other times I'm just right there in that spot where I can just be, and it's so wonderful. So, again, like I was saying, since I don't know who all was here, and the chat just kind of flies by, and I don't Substack doesn't give me a record of the chat, so it's not like I can go back and look at it. So if you wanted to comment or talk to me about anything, my inbox is open, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. So, um, I think that we will. Oh, I wanted to mention again for those of you who were interested, I and maybe didn't catch it, I was reading from the Tao Te Ching. It looks like Tao Te Ching. So if you go to type it in, it's TaoTeChing, and this is an ancient, one of our oldest, maybe the oldest, uh, spiritual text, and in my opinion, one of the most, well, it has a lot of wisdom for such a tiny little book. The first time I read it in one sitting. So it's somebody who came from evangelical Christianity. It's nothing like reading the Bible. You can get a lot out of just a little bit here. And so if you are interested, you can, this is the Stephen Mitchell translation, which I love. It's my favorite translation, but there's quite a few other translations of it out there. You can find it online for free, like as a PDF or on various websites. I know if you have Amazon Prime, like Kindle, I'm pretty sure they've got one in their Prime library for free. Not It's not the Stephen Mitchell version, but it's there it's still a great book regardless of the translation. So if that's something you're interested in, uh, I encourage you to, pick that up or seek that out. It's it it this is where we get a lot of our ideas about wu wei, stillness, not doing effortless action, no mind. So you'll see where a lot of those concepts are derived from in that book. All right. So let's go ahead and practice again for just a few minutes. Let's do nothing together. And for those of you who have joined since the last time we did this earlier, don't try and do anything, or don't try not to do anything either. Just let yourself be. Whatever comes natural, let it be natural. Whatever is happening, let it happen. You can, figure it out later. You can you can ruminate on it or reflect on it afterward. Right now, just see what happens when you try and be, when you try to do nothing. And we're going to do this for a few minutes. You don't have to try and breathe a certain way. You don't have to try and focus on a certain thing. If that happens, that happens. You can if you want, but for the most part, you just want to allow yourself to be. And there's no getting this right. There's no, we're not going to hand out medals afterwards. This is all about you and how this affects you. This is about you. This is about what goes on inside of you. So don't worry about, there's no judgment here. The only one that could judge you is you. And so don't do that either. Don't judge yourself. Don't just let yourself do what comes natural. All right. So if you want to join in with me, again, we're going to just practice this for a few minutes. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open. If you have some sort of symbol or image or something around that you want to focus on, you can do that, or you can just try not doing anything and just see what happens. So here we go. Okay. Um, so how was that for you? How did that go? What was your experience? Was it easy? Was it difficult? What did you find was happening? What was going on? These are things you're going to want to ask yourself and reflect on now. Um, I know sometimes, especially in the beginning, it can be a little sometimes kind of overwhelming because when we quiet, we'll get all the internal stuff coming out, like, you'll start to hear it more, um, and that's okay. Tangled words got distracted. I got distracted once I started thinking about, like, you guys, and, um, and that's when I kind of raised my hands and decided to just, put some energy out to you guys and then bring my focus back to myself and focus on that. Um, so it's there's no again, you did a good job just for being here, just for doing this. Um, and you have plenty of time to practice more. Uh, I know as you get further into it, things will change. Sometimes your body might react. You might feel antsy. You might feel like you need to move, and I'm going to encourage you to do that. If you're ever practicing being, stillness, doing nothing, meditation, however you wanna look at it, and you start to feel, like, movement in your body, like you wanna move, don't repress that. Don't stop that. Um, Allow yourself to move. That's why, again, for some people, walking meditation is very valuable because, um, we get a lot of built up energy, and when you stop and are still, it wants to go somewhere. And, I see Tangled said the first time she got emotional, and that's that's awesome actually, that you were getting in touch with yourself like that. So I'm gonna say don't repress anything. If when you do this, if you start getting emotional, let yourself be emotional. I have There was a time when I had stopped meditating for a while, I got out of the habit, and when I got back into it, it seemed like every time I would meditate, I would cry and then laugh. It was like my husband would sometimes come back there and be like, "Are you okay?" Because it was just I was experiencing these different emotions, and this idea that you're supposed to, like, make yourself, like, just zero out or something, that's really not the goal. Doing nothing The goal is to allow yourself to be free and natural. So if you get emotional, be emotional. If your body wants to move around, let your body move around. If you start feeling like dancing, let yourself dance. And I am so serious here when I say let yourself do what comes natural. Um, there's no wrong way to do this. Yoga, uh, in over here, we kinda, like, separated yoga and meditation, like, they're, like, kind of the separate thing, and yoga's, become, like, this exercise that a lot of times for a lot of people doesn't have any spiritual connotation even with it, but yoga is kind of like the way to prepare your body for meditation, and many times when when I meditate, I will intuitively start doing yoga. And what I mean by that, I don't go, I'm going to do the camel pose honestly, since I've been doing intuitive yoga for most of my life, I really don't even know the names of a lot of poses because I just let my body I feel into my body and let my body move. That's the whole point of yoga, is to get in touch with your body while you're in a spiritual state, and it helps you rise spiritually. And so, if you meditate and wanna move around, there is actually a lot of, background for that. That's like what yoga is basically. It's the movement that prepares our body to be able to be still for stillness. And again, if you want to move around, if you want to walk around, if you want to, all of these things are fine. Um, I know for me, and this I know has I've talked to some people where it kind of freaked them out. So just like how the thoughts sometimes can rattle you when you get still and suddenly you're hearing all these thoughts in your head. Sometimes you get to a certain point where you start to, what I call, hearing the silence or hearing the spirit. And it's like this sound that's within you. Um, and when earlier I talked about, we were talking about how sometimes you're, like, gifted or through grace, you're you have an experience, a spiritual experience, and then later you might lose it, and then you have to, like, cultivate it and learn and practice how to have it in your life, and that happened to me with that. When I first had my spiritual awakening, I immediately started to be able to tap into that. When I would meditate, I would hear this sound, and, some people were like, "Is that tinnitus?" I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the ringing in your ear, when I would try and describe it, and no, well, honestly, I don't know. Maybe that is what tinnitus really is. But, um, for me, and it's a hum that turns into a download of information, that is exactly what it is. You articulated it beautifully, Tangled Words. So I would hear that, and then I would start receiving all this insight and understanding. And um, when I would go to be still or meditate, I would be right there. I could tap right into it. And it would also be mostly soothing. It was like it could almost immediately bring me into stillness. And sometimes it would even be, I'd hear like these beeps, and it would all, I mean, it's really interesting. Like the more I would hear it, listen, it was almost like the louder it would get and the deeper I could hear it. And but then after a few years, I had some situations come up to where I my spiritual life got kind of cloudy, and I stopped practicing a lot of things. Well, they had been gifted to me and they had come so easy that I hadn't necessarily cultivated everything. So there were things that kind of disappeared from my life that I had to recultivate. And one of those things was the sound of silence or the sound of the spirit. It went away. And when I would meditate, it was very hard for me to find stillness, and I wouldn't hear that anymore. And I started wondering if something was wrong with me, if I had lost it, what I had done. And um, eventually, through practice and being able to cultivate stillness again, uh, it came back, if you will. And I remember when it came back, I was like, "Oh, so I wasn't crazy all that time," because honestly, I started to wonder if I had been imagining it or if I had, like, if it was just some, like, because when I had my spiritual awakening, it was pretty intense. There was a lot of stuff happening that, so then later on when I reflected on it, it there's that temptation to wanna think that maybe you were delusional or crazy or imagine things. And I am happy to say I was able to cultivate most of those things. Well, I think all of those things, to become a practice in my life to where I know now how real they are, because they've come in a much more grounded manner now. Because when I was first spiritually awakened, it wasn't very grounded. It was kind of crazy at first. Um, and Tangled Word says you can call it back with just asking for clarity. And I love that. because it goes hand in hand, like what she's saying. Um, that sound brings clarity. It it shows you so much. It brings so much insight. It brings so much understanding. But I have known some people that it kind of, you know, upset them a little bit. Some people, and I'm just going to throw this out there, some people who partake of cannabis, especially not on a regular basis, like if they do it, you know, infrequently, have found that when they partake, it can bring them very quickly or closely to a spiritual state. And that, for some people, will happen immediately. And I've known people that stopped partaking of cannabis because that sound freaked them out, and they connected it to the cannabis. Um, but really, the cannabis was just a catalyst for opening them up. And again, I want to say, I know some of you already know how I feel about this. I am by no means trying to say you should become dependent or reliant on cannabis. Um, but I'm also not saying that cannabis is bad. This is, again, just like everything, this is up to you to find your own way and what works for you. But I do think that sometimes these things are tools. They help. I call them magic feathers. Some people have other names for them. They can help us believe in ourselves. But in my opinion, the goal is to not need anything to master us, to not need anything to like that we can enter into the spiritual realm just as Tangled Word says, just by asking for clarity. And she did say it gets a lot louder with cannabis, and so she's had that similar experience. So I just want to, um, let you know that there might be some things when you start experimenting with being still and doing nothing and meditation that can maybe, cause a little bit of fear, and that's okay. I mean, that's kind of natural anytime we start doing something new. So don't jump to the conclusion that you're doing something wrong, that you're hurting yourself, that it's bad. Step back, observe it, reflect on it, and if you want to talk about it, or if you need somebody to talk about it, you can always, you know, get in contact with me through Substack, and I'd be happy to help you with any of those, fears or worries that might come up. And yeah, Tangled Word says she gets more fearful when she doesn't hear anything for a few days. And yeah, I can understand that, especially when you're used to having a connection. And then, but sometimes there's probably always a reason. But sometimes it's the flow, and like, we need there's an ebb and flow to life, and there's seasons and there's phases, and just like the moon goes through her phases every month, not every day and not every time is going to be the same. But there are times when things happen because we are out of alignment, and that's why it's always good to check with yourself and see you know what's going on inside yourself. And maybe you've picked up a habit or a practice, or maybe you're listening to something or watching something, or there's a lot of different things that can affect you. And being aware of that is very, I mean, it's very important to having a a real, natural, effortless relationship with yourself and the spirit. So, okay, everybody, I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I appreciate you all so much. And I am so thankful that you have joined me today, and I look forward to hearing from you. I will have this posted probably tomorrow, and I'll be putting clips out, you know, through the week at least, maybe even longer than that because I think it's easier for a lot of people to watch clips versus the whole thing, especially when it's gone on this long. So I don't necessarily expect everybody to rewatch the entire thing. So I will be putting clips out. And I again, I'm just so happy you guys were here and I thank you, Mac. I'm so happy to hear that you enjoyed the live stream. I will say I feel like it's getting easier. As some of you know, the first time I did it, I was pretty terrified. And I feel like kind of getting getting a little bit more into the swing of things with this. If you have any um requests or eventually I'd like to do some more interactive stuff where we do maybe some Q&As or maybe even some oracle tarot type readings. But if you have other ideas or requests for things you'd like me to talk about, or if you like, doing nothing together, if you like meditating, if you think we should maybe spend some time meditating longer, if you want to learn more about mudras, if you want to learn, let me know what kinds of things you're curious about or interested in. And, um, I will do my best to work that in. Of course, some of you know I'm kind of spontaneous, and many times I tune into that sound that we were talking about, and I'll get the idea of what I want to do. That's how this came up, to do nothing. I kind of was listening to that, and all of a sudden I got the idea I'd love to just do nothing with my Substack friends, and so. But I appreciate your feedback as well. And Tangled said she would love to learn more about tarot, and so maybe I'll do I think my first live stream I talked a little bit about tarot, but that's been a while, so maybe the next one I will go into some depth about tarot, and maybe we'll do some, like, I don't know, short little readings or something like that. So let me know what you guys think, and I again, I love you all. And I appreciate you for being here. And I will see you on Substack, and I will see you next time.